buys a property, signs a year lease, hopes to talk to the tenant once in a year. But co-living, I have Sean O'Connor, who I have a couple questions so we can go into this. But you have the information on co-living, and there will be questions in the chat. We will answer all of them. First, uh, where do you live? Where do you physically live?
I physically live in Southern California, Irvine.
Oh, I'm
Um,
very sorry you live in California. Okay. And then where
yeah,
where do you
believe me.
invest?
I'm actually a sixth generation Californian, one of those rare animals. So, yeah. And
And
where do I
where do you
invest?
invest?
Today, our investments within our business are in Las Vegas.
Okay. Nice. And the first time we met was in Las Vegas in person at the
That's
One Rental
true.
at a Time event
Yep.
in 2024.
Yep.
Did you go this year?
I did. Yeah. In fact, like I said, I missed you there. I saw you in your big black Stetson hat, but before I could say hello, you were leaving in a car, and I guess you were sick, is what
Yeah, I was
I
trying
heard.
not to spread the plague. I mean, like I was looking forward to that event so much. I didn't want to miss being there, but I didn't want to get everybody sick, so I was in
Yeah.
and out. I'll be back in Vegas in October,
Yes, you
speaking
will.
at BPCon.
Congratulations, by the way.
So hopefully, thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited about that. So you live in Southern California. I pretty much grew up not too far from you. I was out in the Lancaster, Palmdale, Rosemond area.
Okay. No,
Couldn't
well,
wait to get out of there. Joined the Marines to get out of there, and they put me in 29 Palms.
no, it's
So
different, right? Still a
yeah,
high
so now I
desert.
live in Washington, and you invest in Vegas.
Yes.
What does your current portfolio look like?
Well, currently I'm holding two co-living rentals. These are houses we bought for the express purpose of converting for co-living. Um, Prior to that, I'd been fixing and flipping. Um, Depending on how deep we get into my history, I mean, we owned a home investor franchise. We started that here in California. We moved it to Vegas during the COVID uh, pandemic, and we were fixing and flipping there until we pivoted to co-living. That's the abridged version.
Okay, and so those two, how many rooms on each property?
Two houses. The smaller of the two is just under 2,100 square feet, two-story. It's 8 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. It was converted from a 4.2 and a half. The second
Okay.
house is 2,800 square feet. It is 9 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and it was originally 4.2 and a half.
And were those converted to by the room before you purchased, or did you purchase and then
No,
you
we
did the
we
conversion?
we purchased them, we converted and furnished and operate.
How long did the conversions take?
They The first house was the bigger of the two, was the first, and of course we knew very little, if nothing, about what we were doing, so that took longer than probably should have. I would say it took probably 3 to 4 months to convert. We, along that way, we were converting the garage because if, more has to be better, right? So we decided if we got 9, we may as well have 11 rooms. And of course, in the process of that, we got caught by code enforcement after the garage was converted. So we had to convert it back to garage space before we could proceed. So that took some extra time and money that we, have written off as a loss to experience, right? As many of them are.
Yeah, it's I try not to talk in too mmany gray areas here on YouTube because you get the keyboard warriors that come after you. The one thing I can't stand about real estate is the permit process. Like an eviction, sure, it's frustrating. You met the jerk out there that's going to make you go through it. But somebody actually got up in the morning and their job is to go and make it hard for you to improve your own personal property, to put barriers in front of you, making places for people to live. So I personally have a problem with that. We want to do it legal. And so this is not a question I'm posing to you or me or anybody listening, but at what point is it better to ask forgiveness than beg permission? Like, yeah, you get caught, you got to tear it down. Sometimes you get caught, you just got to pay triple the permits and rip things open to be inspected. And I've purchased a property where they had work done about 5 years before I purchased it without permits, and then I purchase it.
Mm.
The city finds out I lean to the right with my politics, and all of a sudden they attack me with permits. So that's my own
Yep.
personal issue. So you converted the garage back to garage.
Garage.
In the future, do you think it's possible to make those 10th and 11th rooms there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and in Clark County, which is the majority of the Vegas market, um, it is a legal use. They will give you a permit to convert garage to living space. But as you say, and we've tried to permit fix and flips in the past there. It, it it's just it's untenable. And so we did just what you suggested. We paid our money, took our chances, and we got caught. Those rare occurrences. We happen to be the one out of a million that gets pinged by somebody in the neighborhood just going by, going, "Huh, I don't remember that being those windows being there before. I wonder if they permitted that." And that's what happened. So yeah,
So the two properties, one's an 8 bed, 3 bath, one's a 9 bed, 3 bath, uh, with as much detail as you're willing to share.
sure.
What do the numbers look like as far as expenses versus income on those properties?
Well, let me give this comparison, which is probably one that someone can apply generally as they look at this model. But roughly, if you take the same house let's take one of my houses that was a 4, 2.5. If that house rented for $2,300 a month, uh, you can predictably take that same house, convert it, and anticipate 3 times gross lift, 2 times net income lift over what you'd get on that same house renting to a single tenant. So there are the pros and cons of, like you said earlier, about you know being lazy or wanting to have an easier ride or less intensity in the management of the property of the tenant population. There's an equal, I would say, or better corollary that benefit by me having access to my house 24/7, which I don't have when I rent to a tenant for 12 months who I do my level best job of vetting the tenant, do everything, and then I give them the key and I say a prayer and hope that I made a good selection. I don't really find out for 12 months later if I did or didn't. Where in my case, I can walk my house anytime. So I know not only can I see behavioral things going on, lifestyle, that sort of thing, that I can get out in front of. I can also keep my eye on any kind of deferred maintenance things. Uh, so there's no big uh, corrective steps I have to take and of course the house is technically never vacant. I don't turn over a whole house. It's always full with, I may be down 3 or 4 rooms at a time, any point in time. But
Yeah, I talk in a lot of videos about how I don't want a big portfolio. What I want is the right amount of cash flow from the least amount of units. And it seems like your variation of that is the most amount of cash flow from the least amount of properties. You still
yes,
have 17 units, right? Nine,
exactly.
nine in this one, 8 in this one, but you don't have complete turnover on a unit. And then if you do have one that moves out and it needs paint and flooring, it's a room and not every room.
Right.
I mean, so there's definitely benefits to it. The biggest benefit that I heard from REI Jared, who lives in Portland area, so I'm just as sad that he lives in a wrong coast state like we do. But he invests in, not too far from Phoenix. And so
Sure.
he's the same thing. He lives in one state, invests at a distance. The benefit that I really think is cool is I have tenants with leases. And the co-living, at least the version that I've heard him talk about, is he has members, not
Yes.
tenants. So you don't have full evictions to go through. It's a very different process. So how does that explain that in words that would make sense because I didn't understand it well enough to explain it?
Well, that, and I know Jared, and I believe at least his initial journey, he was hosting his first house or houses on the Pad Split platform. Their model is um, you as the host are responsible for your house. You master lease your house to Pad Split. They sign up members who join Pad Split and then have access to rooms on any house across the system in any house, on their on that behalf of the platform. So that's where the membership comes in. Now that doesn't keep someone from doing that as an individual and having members that they sign up. It's a way to um, it's one way to sort of navigate around the unrelated party regulation, if there is any, because now they're related by membership, if not by blood, which you would find in a family situation. So that's the simplest way to compare, or the reasoning behind the membership model. We don't go that route. We take an even different route. Um, but I will say that we started our journey intending to host on Pad Split. We ended up owner operating, managing our houses ourselves, including, marketing and placing guests in our house.
And do you do memberships or is it leases?
No, no, I mean it's neither. We have a set of rules that we require someone who's going to join our house as a guest sign. It makes it as clear as a layperson can make it that this is not a landlord-tenant relationship. You're a guest and you're at will. And if we find that we can't have a meeting, maintain a meeting of the minds, you'll be asked to leave. And in my particular tenant class, that works. That may not be, and I'm sure if you were my legal counsel, you'd be turning over right now saying, Sean, are you mind? Why are you not papering this properly? You're open to all this, that, and the other thing. Well, in 2+ almost 3 years, we've had no problems. That doesn't mean they won't come up, but so far we're good. And Dion, you asked an earlier question. I didn't mean to sidestep it, on what we earn on our houses. We started out, our business model was to $1,000 a room, whether we rented to a single guest or double occupancy. In some cases, we really shot the moon and it went to triple occupancy rooms because of our specific niche guests that we're catering to. But again, our co-living model, I'd say most, if not all, are really geared to individuals gainfully employed. So this is workforce shared housing, and it's the benefit, as I mentioned, the benefit to me as the landlord at 3 times gross, 2 times net income. The benefit to the occupant is they're going to be able to be renting a room at roughly 60 to 70% below what they'd pay for a 1 bedroom, 1 bath apartment. So that's the trade-off. That's how everyone benefits. The community
Yeah.
benefits, the individual, and the investor benefits.
So the rough math then, if you have 8 units here, 9 units here, figure probably 10% vacancy. So you always have like two or so rooms that you're dealing with.
That's fair.
Um, so 15,000 a month coming in. Mortgages on these properties?
In my case, no, but that's not a badge of honor. It was, you could argue that's depending on your relationship with money and how you feel about leverage and debt and good debt. I could have had, 4 or 5, 6 more houses if I'd used leverage and still covered my debt service and had more than ample safety net in terms of net income after all expenses plus debt was paid. So, which is really what some of the under,
So that's
excuse me, those key benefits to
the
co-living.
30-second version of you like to buy cash.
That's been our plan.
There
And
you go.
again, we started down
I
this
don't
road.
have a problem. I don't have a
Yeah,
problem with that. I talk about leverage because it has benefits. There's peace of mind benefits. There's the most amount of cash flow from the least amount of properties. Like there's benefits to cash too. Like which one fits your style, which one fits your goals. You're not making an appreciation play. If you wanted appreciation on multiples of what you invested, you'd use leverage. If you were making a depreciation means everything play, you'd want leverage. But if you don't, you have just taxes and insurance and repairs. So you're more net than the other way. So
Right.
I don't judge people who buy cash, or I own two that are paid off. I talk about one
Mhm.
of them kind of being a mistake. But okay, so that's a pretty significant amount of cash flow from just two properties.
Yes. Yeah. And now that we've gotten this thing, dialed in over the course of months and years, that's um, our systems are now in place. It's what's predictable is predictable, and we know how to anticipate and try as best we can stay out ahead of it. And so it works. It's we're remote, and we don't. I mean, we're over. Where it's a 4 hour car ride from here, or depending on a good day, to Vegas from where we live. So it's we're usually there once a month just to check on everybody. It is a relationship business. Some would look at it as a absentee owner tenant relationship, and it's possible if you're using a pad split kind of arrangement. But in for us, it makes more sense, and we sleep better, knowing that our guests know who we are, and we know them, and so it works.
Nice. I have two questions, and then we're going to get to some of the questions in the chat. The
Okay.
first one is, uh, how did you pick Las Vegas as the market to invest in?
Interesting question. Again, we were there because of our franchise with Homevestors. The journey with co-living started in 2021. Pad Split is a vendor to Homevestors, and we met them at a year-end convention. I say we, myself and a couple of my peers from the Vegas market. We spoke to Pad Split and said, "You guys got to be in Vegas." They up to that point they'd never been west of the Rocky Mountains. So with repeated discussions, they said, "Okay, if you can guarantee us 10 doors, when we launch, we'll be there." They did their due diligence. So that was how we got into it. Now, our master plan, between myself and my other peers, was we'd spoken to private equity when money was flowing like wine and rates were at zero, and private equity wanted a minimum of 100 doors that they were going to buy from us at some gaudy multiple. So that was our master plan over, say, a 3 year runway. Um, and of course, so we entered 2022, and by mid-year, as rates shot up, private equity, liquidity, everything went away. So we were left with these our first two houses out of tens, if not more, that we were planning to develop. And now, it's like showing up for the ball all dressed up, and there's no one there, right? We were late. And so that's how we got into it. And that's why Vegas, and how we ended up owning and operating ourselves, because and I'm a big advocate of PATS, but I think it's a great platform for particularly those that are starting new, because it's guardrails. There's a lot of support there, and a lot of others that you can gain insight from. But it's not for everybody. And in our case, they had some internal problems for a moment, and we had two houses finished and nobody to fill it. So we just took it upon ourselves to fill our houses ourselves. Once we'd done that, we kind of went, well, we really don't need pad split. So that's how we've ended up in this situation. Now, subject matter experts in something we knew nothing about, and just literally felt our way through the dark until we found the light, if you will.
The other question, in all of Washington state, I believe there's only one city that has that antiquated law of no more than three unrelated adults can live in a building together. And the membership gets you kind of around that. Does your guest contract get you around that, or does Clark County even have that rule?
Well, Clark County right now, for better or worse, is uh, laser focused on killing the short-term rental market. As you may be aware, there's somewhere, depending on whose numbers you believe, 12 to 20,000 illegal, in Clark County's mind, short-term rental house units in the valley, and so that's who they're particularly focused in on. But, if someone were to say, hey, what are all these people coming and going from that house, from the neighborhood, that could yield a knock on the door from code enforcement. I have had that conversation or that door knock, and we just simply talked through it. They were not invited into the house, so it was just a conversation, and they went away. And again, that's part of the reason it's important to us to be visible in and around our houses. We know our neighbors. Our guest population is our working professionals. They aren't there to party. They aren't raising. They're not a noise nuisance. They're none of those things that it's really antithetical to short-term rentals where people are there for vacations and having a great time. So we tend to keep our head down and not attract the wrong kind of attention. So we haven't had a problem. But to answer your question, there is a code on the books in Clark County on unrelated parties.
So what I'm going to talk about right now is the benefit to buying cash the way you did, not having a mortgage. I talk about buying an asset that would make sense as a long-term rental because you do have laws like that three adults, I can't, no more than three unrelated adults. You do have hotel chains spending billions of dollars on lobbyists to bribe politicians to stop short-term rentals. So if somebody buys a property to do short-term rental or to do buy the room and they get they finance 80% of it and they put 20% down, then they finance the work to get the conversion done. So they're up to their neck in leverage. And then the law changes or the code enforcement comes in and says, hey, you can't have these things. Yours being paid for cash and probably sound like funding the conversion yourself. You don't have the huge overhead to where if the city came in and said, okay, got to shut that down, it's just got to be a rental. Yeah, you'd lose a huge amount of cash flow, but you wouldn't be negative and going bankrupt. You wouldn't be losing the
Correct.
properties. You'd have an exit strategy of probably selling and finding a market that does work or going to pad split and using their way around with the memberships. So I think, again, good choice.
Well, and it made sense for us again for those reasons. We knew nothing about this. It was patient money we used. We have some money in a pension plan that from my wife's previous business. So it was long-term money. So we didn't we just wanted to safely park it there, see if this thing would work, and so that's how it worked and why it worked for us, paying cash. And so it's been a good decision.
Curtis asks, is pad split the best if is there something else to use at a distance? Do you use any kind of platform at a distance, or is it just all something you do yourself? Like I know
I
you
do
said
not
you do it yourself.
use because I've gotten myself, connected with a certain, particular employment sector that, I'm now sort of a known commodity in my market that I could scale to other markets. But, whether it's, in Vegas, you don't have to go too far when, pointing to the strip and saying, well, there's probably lots of employment, plenty of employees that need an affordable housing alternative or that's clean, close, safe, has access to public transportation, walkability to services, and so it's a great scenario for ready employment. So I don't really need to go outside that, but there's some I've heard have you used Furnish Finder as a place to list their property, so that's a cost to the property owner or the landlord to list their I think I'm also hearing, Zillow may be getting into that space as well. I don't know that for a fact. But there are a couple other platforms out there similar to Pass, but I don't believe they are as available in any market as PadSplit may be. So, and the name escapes me right now. I can't tell the gentleman or gentle person what those other names are, but there are out there.
With the version of Buy the Room that you're doing, do you have your properties in an LLC or in your own name?
Well, again, they are in a pension plan, so they're even more, um, unusual, I guess, unique. It's not so it's neither individual or LLC. Um, but it's blind to no one knows the name of our pension plan or who's behind it or who owns the plan. So there is some anonymity in that respect.
Okay, so that brings up two questions from me because that was
Okay.
from Curtis. So if it's in a pension plan, I don't have a pension. If I had a retirement account, I'd probably still be working. But the first thing is a lot of pension plans, if you own real estate in a pension plan, you're not allowed to self-manage. Does yours just not have that rule?
Well, we do enough that's not self-managed, that meets the test, if you will.
Okay.
We have others
So you found
doing
a
things so
workaround.
that, yeah, it is. And it's, but you're right. You're absolutely right. There are rules. Again, it's an important point. There are rules if you do own an pension plan about self-management.
And you don't really care about the depreciation with it being in a pension plan. You don't get to use that as well.
Exactly. We
Okay.
don't. In fact, as we've looked at completing a life cycle on our houses, which is because part of what I do is help others in this asset class space, uh, is what's your exit strategy? So that is I lost my where I was going with that point, but
The
um,
depreciation.
oh right. So we could, in our case, we could partner with somebody if we chose to not sell outright and give them the depreciation, for example. We don't need it. So we can't take it. So, but we can assign it to somebody. So that's another way to look at your exit strategy if you were to get into the space. Um, you might find somebody like me that has wants to, JV with somebody and give away as a part of the terms of the agreement, the depreciation.
Terry asks, what type of locks do you use on the main entrance and rooms?
Well, they're all combination and they can be remotely programmed by us as the master or holder of the combination. So um, each room has its own individual um, key code to the room. That same code opens the front door, but each room is private to their own code, meaning the rooms are
Do you remember the
private.
name brand of the locks?
Ah, I don't recall offhand. There
So
are a number of them
if you
out there.
can email
Yeah,
me that
sure I
later,
will.
so Terry, I will pin that in a comment down below. So it'll be the top comment with the link to the locks that he's using.
Yes.
Cool. Are there any unique insurance issues? Same question from Terry, same person.
In fact, I think that yeah, I've had this question a few times. I mean, it's just a commercial policy. There's nothing unique. Again, all these things are kind of a rabbit hole. It kind of runs along a similar vein or path to, do you permit or don't you permit? I mean, there's always some point where, if you've ever had to file an insurance claim for anything, whether it's a door ding in your car, a fender bender, right? The job of the insurance underwriter is to, the claims adjuster is to pay you as little as they possibly can. So there's going to be some kind of face off and negotiation around. I don't care what you call it or how you describe it, but we meet the basic tenets of a commercial liability policy. So there's nothing uniquely
Cool.
different to what we do than renting multi or single family.
Kind of my opinion on insurance too is I would never use it unless it's a complete burn down or somebody broke their neck, like hundreds of thousands of dollars of medical bills. Keep good reserves, handle issues that you can on your own. Handle like if I have a flood, I'm going to take care of that myself. I'm not going to 10, 20, 30,000. I'm still not going to make an insurance claim on it. Uh, because it can triple your rates and it can make it to where no one else can insure you for 5 years, or it can make it to where no one will insure you. And you get, if you have a mortgage, what's called lender placed insurance, which costs way more than insurance, doesn't give you a penny, and only makes the mortgage holder whole if there's something wrong with your property. Um, so I just have homeowners insurance and I make sure that the insurance company knows if I live there or not. Because as soon as you move out of a house hack, tell them you don't live there, your insurance rate goes down because they're no longer insuring your personal stuff. So that's cool.
Right.
Nothing specific that you had to do. I think we've gotten through most of the questions. I'll give it just another minute in case any others pop up. If somebody wants to reach out with questions, like, to get a hold of you,
Absolutely.
because maybe they're in a different market or something, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, I have a website. It's called biggerrents.com. So all my contact information is there. There's some other things on there that may be of interest. The basics of how a house converts from single tenant to to co-living. Um, One of the things I have a necessity I had when I first got involved, and now I use it today in my wholesaling business is, ARV, which was all you ever heard about when you're fixing and flipping. It really didn't matter when you're not selling something what the after repair value is because you're holding it long term. So really, it was more a measure of cash on cash return. So I built a calculator that does cash on cash return, either paying cash or using leverage. Also, in my case, it has the ability to build in a margin for a wholesaler who's going to participate as the middleman, finding a deal and signing it to an end owner buyer. Um, so that's available. I can help folks if they're looking at their own asset, or if they're wholesalers themselves, if
Can
they
you
want
spell
to
that
have
website for me?
less insurance. It's Bigger Rents, just like BIGGER and then rents, RENTS.com.
I
And
was trying to look it up while you were talking, and
I
my
have
internet told me it doesn't
my
exist.
my programmer's been working on it, so
Okay, fair enough.
it would be today that she had it down and
Nice.
doing some
Okay, well,
repairs
in
or
Futureland, when you're
updates.
watching this video, it should work.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, absolutely. And in the meantime, if you want to message me direct the old-fashioned way, I can give you my mobile, and you can do it that way.
Well,
Uh,
if they email me, I can connect them to your email as well.
okay, perfect, perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's my best way so you don't get a bunch of phone calls.
yeah. Well, I want to be able to respond, so that's anymore with as much spam voicemailing going on. It's like you never
Cool.
know who's
So,
calling, right?
last question from me before we wrap this up then. You start in 2021, you have two properties with 17 units. You have it in a retirement account, a pension plan. Uh, you used cash, so you don't have mortgages, so you have significant cash flow going into the pension plan. What does your retirement and exit strategy look like?
Well, my wife asks me all the time, when are you going to retire? When are you going to give this thing up? And I say, well, so what does that look like? First of all, I don't know what that, I can't imagine that, I would probably go bonkers within the first 30 days. So in terms of leaving it, God willing, I see no real exit because this is really fun for me. It's not, I get up every day breathing fire and can't wait to get after it. And so I don't ever want to lose that fire in the belly. So in terms of ending that, don't know when that ends. But the exit is really, an outright sale. What and we didn't get into this. It's a no whole another episode, but potentially. But you know, when you're used to that cash flow, and again, depending on what your debt structure is or how you hold that property, you may want to turn into the bank and not sell it. I mean, not sell it as the bank, be the bank and lend on that property and
Sell or
continue to,
finance it to somebody on so
yeah,
you keep getting
continue that
payments,
cash
but
flow to you. They take the operational responsibility and you still have all the security of the asset. And, you could do much worse.
cool. Terry jumped in with another question. Do you require your residents, your tenants, basically, to carry renter's insurance?
No, because my occupants, um, they technically they don't consider my house their primary residence. So I rent my houses, my room's furnished, the houses are furnished. They don't bring anything with them but the clothes on their back. And they're a pretty transient audience, if you will. So they don't really, other than, their personal effects. I mean, there's really nothing there to ensure. They would sort of laugh in my direction if I asked them to do that. And there's not much exposure. I guess, again, we're back to about insurance. You know, I could, it would probably be more of a barrier than it would be a benefit to me getting my houses and my rooms filled. So long answer is no.
So I want to say thanks, Sean, for coming on here because this is what I want people to understand as I'm gonna close this out. There are best practices, there is optimization, there is the way to do it the most legal. There's the way to do it the most confusing and complicated. There is no right way. Everything that you've said, if people were paying attention to this, there are some gray areas where you just said, we do this and it works. Hasn't blown up in our face yet, right? That was kind of the answer. And there is a lot of that that I do as well that I don't put on YouTube because of those people who would be like, they would just attack some fact that has nothing to do with whether you can run a successful business or not. They'll say, oh, you shouldn't do that. You should do this. Like the LLC debate that comes up. So, everybody watching, remember you are going to be alive in 5 years. You should start investing like it because Sean started this in 2021 and created enough cash flow to where, done right, you don't need a W-2 with a couple of properties.
Very true.
Ciao.
Thank you so much. Bye all.
And we are off of YouTube.
Okay.